As MMA fans, we are all too familiar with the legends that made the sport. But what about the fighters who left a mark in the UFC that simply can't be erased? From the fastest knockout in a title fight to the longest fight in UFC history. In today's video, we are going to be talking about all these records that are just simply impossible to beat. So as always, let's talk about it. Kicking off our list, we're going to start this with the notorious Conor McGregor, who holds the record for the fastest knockout in a UFC title bout. In just 13 seconds, Conor landed his signature left hook to Jose Aldo, which sent him to the Shadow Realm. But what makes this UFC record even more insane is that Conor predicted exactly how he planned to finish the fight, and as always, he delivered again.
Relaxed and smiling.
What makes this record even more special is that Conor didn't just beat an old wash-up Jose Aldo, but he beat the Brazilian in his prime, a feat that not many people could say they have done to this day. For the next record, we're going from the fastest finish in a UFC title bout to the latest finish in a UFC title bout. Now, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson holds this record, and in his fight with Kyoji Horiguchi with a mere 1 second left in the 5th round. Now, honestly, tell me, who can even beat this? First of all, there's not only no time left for someone to stop the fight any later, but most fighters play it safe towards the end of the fight, especially if they're winning. But Demetrious Johnson is just built different. He was not only winning and dominating that fight, but he wanted to prove a point and get that finish.
The best. There's no one better. You just got the latest submission in the history of the UFC. 4 minutes, 59 seconds of the 5th round in a fight you were absolutely dominating.
On the team of UFC finishes, for the next record, we gotta think of speed. If I had to ask you what is the quickest knockout in UFC history, I'm sure most of you would already know. And that goes to Jorge Masvidal against Ben Askren, where the signature flying knee that knocked the wrestler out flat in a mere 5 seconds.
Clock is brought to you by Modelo.
Now you gotta realize how insanely quick that is. For most fighters, if they even touch gloves, it's too late. They can't beat the record. The timing, the technique, the precision, all of that had to be perfect, and Masvidal was perfect on the night. Personally, I feel like this record is simply impossible to beat, and honestly, I feel like most of you would agree. But in case you don't agree, let me know down below who do you think could beat it and who would they finish. Okay, stepping away from the UFC finishes for a moment, we are about to talk about the oldest UFC champion in history. Now, I'm gonna give you a few seconds to guess who that is down below, so let me hear it. Okay, so if you typed Glover Teixeira, then I'm sorry, I just gotta say you're wrong. You're probably a newer fan and you don't know this, but the oldest champion in UFC history is Randy Couture at a mind-boggling, age-defying 45 years old. Now let's just talk for a second. Now, first of all, most fighters don't even fight until their 40s, let alone winning a damn belt. So the fact that Randy not only fought to this age, but became the champion is honestly insane. And I don't see anyone even coming close. A lot of the newer fighters not only start their careers earlier, but they also retire earlier, which in my opinion is a smarter decision. They can play it safe, they don't have to take unnecessary risks. And the more you think about it, it's honestly insane that the UFC even let him fight till that age, yet alone fight for the title, and then to go and win the title. It's simply insane, and in my opinion, unbeatable. The next record, I want you to think of invincibility. A fighter that not only never lost, but also never really got damaged. Which fighter comes to your mind? For most fans and for the UFC records, that fighter is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib's undefeated record of 29-0 is one of the most impressive feats in MMA history. And it's even more impressive that he retired undefeated. And it's the fact that he retired in his prime. And honestly, if he fought till today, I still don't see anyone beating him. Let me know if you think anyone on the current roster would beat him, but for me, I don't think anyone's getting close. And currently, in the UFC, and not only in the UFC, but in MMA in general, there's only 4 fighters that are close to Khabib's record, right? And that's Shavkat Rakhmonov, Movsar Evliov, I apologize if I said it wrong, Umar Nurmagomedov, who all fight in the UFC, and then Usman Nurmagomedov, who fights in Bellator. And of course, there had to be 2 Nurmagomedovs because who else could be close? And by close, I mean that they are on an 18-fight win streak. That's, for those of you who are not great at maths, That means they are 11 fights behind, not only beating Khabib's record, but simply tying it. And honestly, none of them do I see getting close. The person who I think might get the closer to it is probably Umar, just because I think he is not in the strongest division. Yes, he's in bantamweight and there is a lot of fighters, but I think Shavkat's in a harder division. I think Movsa Evlovov is in a harder division. I know he mixes between featherweight and bantamweight, so hopefully eventually we'll get to see those two fight. And then Usman is in lightweight, so personally I don't see it happening. Okay, before we continue, I just want to say thank you for getting this far and I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to see more MMA related content, then maybe consider subscribing and turn notifications on. Anyways, back to the video. If I had to ask you who is the best submission specialist in the UFC, who would you say? Brian Ortega? I mean, he's great, but no. Would you say Shavkat Rakhmonov? I would say he is a submission specialist, but he's a little bit of both. What about the king, Dricus du Plessis? While yes, he is great, he simply isn't that guy. The actual king of submissions is the legend, Charles do Bronx Oliveira, with a whopping 16 submission victories. Okay, what makes this record insane is not simply that he has 16 submission victories, but even if he had 16 wins in the UFC, that would be impressive all on its own. Most fighters don't even get to 16 fights in the UFC, and the fact that he has 16 submission victories alone is honestly insane. Now, let me just point something out for you. Not only does he hold the record for the lightweight division, but he also holds the record for the featherweight division. He's the king of 2 divisions and the whole UFC when it comes to submissions. And honestly, I don't see anyone coming close. Personally, I think he's going to have 17 submission victories after his next fight against Michael Chandler. But yeah, I don't see anyone beating this record. Honestly, not anytime soon, unless someone else comes up and all of a sudden they're amazing at submissions and they just get it done. I don't see this happening, but let me know what you guys think. Now for some UFC trivia, and I promise you this is not a trick question, but what is the longest fight in UFC history? I'm gonna give you some time to think and then comment it down below and let me see if you get this right. Time's up. If you said your average championship rounds, which is 25 minutes, then I have to say you're wrong, my friend. The longest fight in UFC history is actually between Royce Gracie and Cam Shamrock, and it lasted an insane 36 minutes. So now you might be asking, wait, Fayyad, but isn't there only 5 rounds and each 5 rounds is 5 minutes, obviously equaling up to 25 minutes? Well, you're not wrong. Actually, in the early days of UFC, there were not only no rounds, but there was also no time limits. So fighters could go as long as necessary. The fight actually ended as a draw, as neither fighter could continue, but many believe that Shamrock won that fight. Honestly, if you want to watch the fight, it is available online, so I would highly recommend it. I personally enjoyed it. Now finally, for the last record of the video, we're going to end with the man who would walk out of any room, Jon Bones Jones. Jones holds the record for the youngest UFC champion in history at an insane 23 years old. For reference, I'm 23 years old and I have achieved fuck all. So this is honestly insane to me to think that at my age he was not only in the UFC but already had gold around his waist. Now, personally, this record is a testament to how great he was and how great he used to be, and honestly, I don't see anyone coming close to this record. The only person who some might say have a chance is Raul Rosas Jr. I was actually speaking to one of my close friends, Mr. V, who is planning to be on the channel very soon, so look out for that video. He personally thinks that he could maybe have an opportunity and might stand a chance to beat the record, just considering how young it is and he still has another 4 years to get that experience and maybe get lucky and win the title. But personally, I think he's in a very difficult division and I don't think he's good enough to get up to that level. But if you think he could do it, then fair enough. Personally, I don't see it. Besides his age, I don't really see the hype around the guy. But I will say he would kick my ass, so I apologize. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more MMA content. And maybe check out this video on Tony El Cucuy Ferguson and how he became a fallen warrior. And as always, I'll check you in the next one.